Most leaders aren't short on, I would say, AI information. They're short on clarity, confidence, and a safe place to make real decisions.
Selection process and data engineering process is what's going to drive us forward. Pipeline, and here's some due diligence I have to do. So those are the sort of ways that we are able to have this conversation in one day rather than saying months after months we get all this information piece by piece, but one day where you will find new types of ownership of data, how to acquire more data, how to process more data, and process those data without ballooning cost, right?
I'm your host, Grant McGaw, and today we're talking about something every executive is feeling right now, even if they don't want to admit it out loud. That is AI, artificial intelligence, not the hype, not the headlines, but the very real question running through boardrooms and leadership off sites. How do we move from talking about AI to actually leading with it? Because here is the truth. Most leaders aren't short on, I would say, AI information. They're short on clarity, confidence, and a safe place to make real decisions. And that's why I'm excited about today's conversation with Asif Haider, the architect behind the AI Leadership Mastermind, a focused executive level experience designed not for your IT team, but for the people who actually own the strategy, the CEOs, C-suite executives, business unit leaders, and boards. This isn't not a keynote. It is not a 300-person conference. It is a small, high-trust room where 5 to 7 leaders roll up their sleeves and work through the leadership, the risk, the culture, and the execution questions that will define the next 3 to 5 years of their organization. So in this episode, we're going to unpack why so many AI initiatives stall after the PowerPoint, what actually happens inside an AI leadership mastermind day, and the kinds of decisions and commitments executives are walking out of or walking into on the other side. So if you are a leader who is tired of the AI buzzwords and are ready for AI business outcomes, this conversation is for you. So let's dive in.
Well, you said PowerPoint, so gotta stick to the PowerPoint, right? We've had it before, we're gonna have it in the future. And the future looks different for PowerPoint. It's not gonna be the same one. It's getting more dynamic. And thanks to artificial intelligence, it's able to do what it's supposed to do. And now it's going to pick up the steam and move with it. And unfortunately, PowerPoint is not going to go away. And I'm fine with that. Being a business intelligence guy, I've been doing business intelligence for the last 10 years. Prior to that, I was in the Air Force. I did lots of work around the globe, 5 different assignments in the U.S. Air Force. So I understand process that happens very slowly over time also matures over time. And AI space right now is going through that maturity stage of infant turning into a child, right? Turning into a little bit more mature than an infant, right? But it doesn't feel that way because it's behaving very intelligently, and it's creating an experience that is also very intelligent. So how do we, come together in a small group and say it's going to mature? How do we start maturing our own AI? Right. I've seen this with AWS where when I was with AWS, they brought me in as a ETL subject matter expert. Right. It was an actual machine learning that will automatically create databases. Right. And by doing that, it was able to shave off 6 months worth of work. Right. And possibly get it done in less than 30 days because of the individual subject matter experts and AI working together. They were able to say, I can, with the help of AI, I can do more than what I used to be able to do, right? Now, you look at it 4 years later, that's the reality that we have because the system has matured that much in 4 years. So what I've seen in the Air Force days, the process that we've used for the last 30 years, it still works. we're not really changing much, because you can imagine military sticks to things that actually works, right? But in the commercial side and the private side of things, I have seen the opposite, right? If you're not breaking things and re-innovating, you are actually falling behind with the competition, right? Falling behind in the global challenges that other organizations will say, you do it this way, I'm going to do it this way. Now you're going to do it this way, but I'm going to do it far better or cheaper using an AI, right? So this business intelligence world is shifting dramatically in all aspects, globally, locally. But because of artificial intelligence, this business intelligence is moving forward a lot faster. And I have seen the most value out of all the engagements I've been in is this 5-to-1 engagement, right? 5-to-1 engagement, sometimes it's called 6-to-1. There's so many terminologies to use it, but the idea is that how do we personalize these information that you have and start making decisions on it?
Mm-hmm.
From those decisions, you start executing. So I've been involved in the Cisco ecosystem, NVIDIA ecosystem, worldwide technology, AT&T, Verizon. Many of these companies are looking to make decisions, yet they do not feel their people is ready, or the people can do majority of the work that's required, because it's a different sort of engagements that they have to have. In the process, what they're also realizing is that they already have the business knowledge, the subject matter expertise. What they need to do is add AI knowledge on top of that. And once you do that process of, this is a growing pain, this is a learning curve, but it's a process just like anything else. You just have to be able to merge into it, break some of the things that re-innovate, and then start engaging with saying, like, look, we don't use AI, we work with an AI, because that AI has matured with us over time. And that's the ultimate message that I've been giving for everybody for the last 7 years is there's a process of collecting those data, building those data, and maturing this data over time. By the time you get intelligence out of it, you have done all the hard work of growing pain, but you have done it and it pays off, right? It pays off eventually. And today's economy, because you can afford the hardware, because you can pay for those data that you haven't had previously, the maturity is happening in a short burst. Nonetheless, it's adding to the full maturity, like you said, 3 to 5 years of maturity or strategy. How do you see yourself 3 years from now? Do you have an AI that you have developed, or are you using an AI that somebody else have developed and you've been using it and not necessarily taking ownership of it, right? So it's a world that is very interesting. And I'm looking forward to engaging with as many small groups as possible, because we are beyond classroom now. We're beyond boardroom. We're on the whiteboard session, so we can do the keyboards in next 30 days.
Now I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be having a number of different sessions, whether it's going to be in Omaha, Nebraska, it's going to be in South Florida, Miami, and also St. Croix, Virgin Islands. We will have executive style luncheons just to get an understanding of what we're talking about. They could be a luncheon, it could be a dinner, and then we'll have actual engagements to engage with afterward with Asif and myself. And we look forward to that. Asif, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. We're talking about doing a very intensive workshop on artificial intelligence. I want to ask you this question. How, in your particular curriculum and what you're doing, how is this different from a typical AI workshop or seminar?
Yeah, so usual engagement is classroom for many people. Majority of the people is a classroom. In the classroom setup, you have 20, 10, sometimes 30 people attending. So there's follow-up, but the follow-up is not most likely individualized, right? And then if you have a classroom environment conversation, now you move into a boardroom conversation. In the boardroom, you are discussing it from the perspective of what you have learned in the classroom, right? So they're both in the learning setup. But once you move into the whiteboard, you are moving from learning to making decisions so that we can execute on those decisions. So classroom, boardroom, they're both learning environments, knowledge environment. Now, how do you take that knowledge into making decisions that is executable? So those are some of the differences between classroom and boardroom and mastermind.
I think that, thank you for clarifying that, so people understand, is it a strategy discussion that we're doing? Is it our peer exchange, technical training? You've kind of given us some context around that, right? But here's the good question we want to ask. What level of AI knowledge is expected?
The level of AI knowledge you need is it can be baselined. So if you have a good amount of AI knowledge, but somebody in your team or somebody in that conversation doesn't have enough AI knowledge or technical background, we create a simple baseline where we make them understand AI does these sort of engagement similar to human intelligence. And once we do that baselining, now you can see you probably don't need all the information about AI. You just need to have your subject matter expertise and how that subject matter expertise is being impacted by AI, either transforming it or augmenting it.
I think that's very clear what you said. So the big question, because a lot of people are going to want to know, do I need a technical background to be in this workshop? Or is it more business focused?
Business folks are the best candidates to be in that room. If you're a decision maker in the business, your ability to execute for next 10 years will start here, right? Because your framework that you understand through, say, digital content like LMS, YouTube, Coursera, you will take those content and personalize it for your business understanding of things. What you're including is AI understanding for your business understanding. So that means you're getting personalized validation of what you know and perspectives that will move you forward in order to go from decisions to executing. So your technical knowledge is as much as you're comfortable with, but we're not there to improve your technical knowledge. We're there to improve your understanding of how technology and AI impacts what it is that you know.
I like that. I like that. So that puts it into context, who should be in the room. And then we have to look at, outcomes. What specific outcomes will they leave with so they understand who really truly needs to be in the room, because this is the outcome that we are questioning. Because a lot of people are going to want to know, do I need a technical background to be in this workshop? Is it more business focused?
Business folks are the best candidates to be in that room. If you're a decision maker in the business, your ability to execute for next 10 years will start here, right? Because your framework that you understand through, say, digital content like LMS, YouTube, Coursera, you will take those content and personalize it for your business understanding of things. What you're including is AI understanding for your business understanding. So that means you're getting personalized validation of what you know and perspectives that will move you forward in order to go from decisions to executing. So your technical knowledge is as much as you're comfortable with, but we're not there to improve your technical knowledge. We're there to improve your understanding of how technology and AI impacts what it is that you know.
I like that. I like that. So that puts it into context, who should be in the room. And then we have to look at, outcomes. What specific outcomes will they leave with so they understand who really truly needs to be in the room, because this is the outcome that we are expecting.
Different industry has different outcome narratives. So say for example, if you look at it from business operation perspective alone and just keep the industry out of it, business operation alone, if you can say, do I build versus buy, right? Do I build an AI or do I buy that AI? Am I just a user of AI or am I the data owner?
Mhm.
Right? These are decisions that we have to make, and the decisions that we rather make it rapidly than to wait a few months and find somebody who can engage internally and do AI councils within our organization. There's a whole process that goes with that decision making. So this mastermind will focus on build versus buy,
Mhm.
user versus data owner, and then we'll talk about business risk, business opportunity, and business optimization using AI.
Well, that's what I wanted to understand out of this. It's so important. Like, will I have actionable direction, or are you just going to give me ideas to that I can begin to look at?
So the risk management framework is one that will help you strategize for the next 10 years. But if you can understand the architecture that your business already has and the architecture it will need, which most likely is the infrastructure, because some people are very cloud native, cloud heavy. But let's say, for example, you have a business that you have lots of infrastructure, like physical infrastructure, like buildings and trucks and things of that nature. How do you understand the ecosystem of everything you have?
Mhm.
And now you want to understand the risk management framework for it and the architecture of it. Like, how do you develop an architecture on top of the infrastructure that you already have? So, if you can see those from the perspective of AI, and somebody will help you develop those AI, which is most likely your internal employees, now you can start taking executable actions in next 30 days. So this is not about an idea, because the use case ranking, use case assessment, use case gap assessment is the next step that you probably will end up doing if you haven't already done that.
Mhm.
But this is about decisions to go into executions in next 30 days.
That's important, so I understand the value that I'm getting out of this workshop. If I'm taking time out of the field to be able to do this, I've got to understand the value and what I'm receiving in return. Now, here's the next question, which is how is this going to apply to my industry or the role that I am? Is it customized or personalized for myself?
When there's a 5 attendees in the room, 5 people means that you get personalized attention, right? This is not a TED talk. This is not a coached session where we tell you what you are and what to do. It's more of an engagement where you are in a hot seat and you are communicating your priorities and use case. And you want to find those use cases that can be, based on your data ownership, right? How do you become a data owner of those use cases? How do you understand that building versus buying has a capability that maybe if you buy, it doesn't bring you that capability?
That's a very, very important. So now you've told me that it is a tailored discussion. It's not just general. It is for me. Big question now becomes, how are risk? This is big now in AI deployment. Risk, governance, and compliance. How are risk, governance, and compliance addressed in this particular workshop?
So risk is pretty much another name for business, right? And the governance is what we have to do in order to be auditable, in order to explain, and in order to be able to make decisions in the future. So the data collection process and data engineering process is what's going to drive us forward. Because more data we collect, more data we can engineer. That's how we know that we're taking on some risk and we're going to let go of some risk, right?
Mhm.
And then when it comes to being able to audit ourselves, those are the business intelligence capabilities that we've already built. But now we're going to improve that business intelligence using artificial intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Um, so some of the risk we have already taken, but now we just have to add more risk and consider those risks as viable for our business, which is that personalized attentions that we need. Is this viable for my business, right? If you're in an industry of, say, manufacturing, your risk is different than finance industry. If you are in an entertainment industry, your risk is far different than both of those other industries. So you really have to say, these are the risks I will accept, but these are the risks that I know is coming down the pipeline, and here's some due diligence I have to do. So those are the sort of ways that we are able to have this conversation in one day rather than saying months after months we get all this information piece by piece, but one day we can set it up in a whiteboard.
I like that. Now, so what if I'm hearing this right? Did it? Are you covering AI exposure, accountability, and the controls, or not?
To simplify the whole discussions, what we use is a hardware understanding and we move into the data understanding, because we understand software most of the time in many ways, because in a business world we have seen impact of software. One of the things that we haven't really been accustomed to because of cloud native and cloud users is the hardware component, right? Hardware is what the missing picture is right now, right? If we get the hardware in our ecosystem, all of a sudden we understand it differently, because now we are talking about data ownership and controlling those data and having those data be engineered in a let's say, for example, compliant ways, right? If you're able to process those data using a hardware that you are in control of, now all of a sudden you have a different source of control over the data. So long story short, it's about understanding the hardware and the data, and the software is where things get kind of fuzzy and blurry, but we engage with the hardware and data component and then move into the software eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so that begins to help me understand what the curriculum is all about, what can expect to understand out of this, and what can I deploy. Help me read the room. Like, who else will be in the room? Is it just my peers, or operators, executives, or vendors, or all of them?
The configurations is up to the decision makers, right? Our difficulty has been that when we engage people, they want to understand who needs to be in the room, and if they're in the room, who else is in the room. It's a difficult conversation to have because it took us 9 months to put one engagement for 3 days, right? Is because that back and forth of, hey, who's going to be in the room, who do you need, and what do they get out of it, right? 9 months later, when they showed up, it's 5 individuals that showed up. Those 5 individuals said, I wish we did this 9 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I wish we did this 9 months ago. So if you're a decision maker, you're making a decision and you want to understand who needs to be in the room, you can bring your own team. You can bring people that you are trusting to guide you through these process. We actually engaged with a family down in Austin because it was a family-owned business. So the family members were in the room, right? So the family members are sitting there asking questions, and they're able to get the perspectives they need for their family business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of, do you want to bring your friends? Do you want to bring your industry colleagues, or you want to do some partnership or JVs with somebody? You want to be able to get those clear-cut answers, do it as fast as possible, and bring the people that you want to be in the room with. Now, if we are able to manage 5 different industry leaders on our own, that's how it's going to be. But then again, we have to change the configuration of the engagement because now we have to keep your IPs, your information that are your business specific, out of the conversation, and have a drive the conversations towards data ownership, build versus buy, but not necessarily going down to your architectures, your infrastructure conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Helps me understand what this is about. That, and I'm sure people are going to ask me this: is this more of a sales event, or is it a neutral discussion? And then, what is the real purpose of this session?
It's vendor neutral and bias free, right? Vendor neutral means I have background working with lots of the cloud vendors out there, and bias free means when it comes to data, it's your data, and you're the only person that should have bias towards those data because that's your data that you own. So when it comes to engaging with your data, I give you the bias free perspective so you see the value in your data, because right now data is just kind of being used for business intelligence purposes and storage purposes, and possibly leaving it in the cloud rather than using it for the purposes of developing AI, developing a chatbot, developing new business intelligence tool. So this sort of engagement, I would say, will bring out those kind of sensitivity where you will find new types of ownership of data, how to acquire more data, how to process more data, and process those data without ballooning cost, right? So this sort of engagement, I would say, is something not everybody's having because they're kind of relying on these heavy conference level engagement or classroom setups. We're saying you already know lots of these things. How about we move from the boardroom to the whiteboard? How do we
Right.
start whiteboarding today so that way you're engaging and getting the validation that you need in a short period of time rather than an extended period of time.
I like that. That shows real value, something I can utilize out of this information that's getting, so I can put it in the right context. So, will this help with our we already have company ROI, return on investment, and cost decisions? Can this help guide investment priorities?
This is a lengthier conversation. Usually, the use case gap assessment, use case prioritization, use case return on investment takes weeks after weeks based on interviewing each individual stakeholders and understanding the business process and developing a guideline for which use case brings the best return on investment. We do not recommend this one as a first engagement because once we have set the baseline understanding of where AI is today and where AI is heading in the future because of the hardware components, your use case will shift with it because the prior use cases that you have developed based on, say, Chat GPT's recommendation or something that was based on academic understanding or media understanding, now we're going to bring it to the industrial understanding, right?
Mhm.
As in what industry is doing and what is the industry return on investment looks like. So the first engagement, we don't necessarily go down the return on investment because we see the shift in the use case identification and use case ranking right away by the end of the day.
Mhm.
Right? Because we're talking about hardware, we're talking about data. Now we see the difficulty in processing those data. And we understand the shortages of the hardware and the difficulties of maintaining those hardware, right? So the use case conversation does happen. It's just that in one day, that's not possible.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's probably a multi meeting discussion. Let's cut to the chase about afterward. What happens after the session? Are there next steps? Are there frameworks? Is there a follow up?
Yes. So the next follow up that we will recommend is to have a community of practice or AI council built within your organization for your employees, for the employees, by the employees. And this community of practice will help to guide, keep things accountable for your organizational, say, 30-day plan or 90 days plan, right? Find out who the change agents are within your organization. If you already have one, how do you conduct train the trainer conversation? So that way these change agents are able to lead this conversation on a weekly basis. The other engagement goes back to the use case return on investment.
Mhm.
How do you create an use case ecosystem? Because a lot of companies have hundreds and hundreds of use cases they can identify, and then they go through this process called use case ranking. And that use case ranking turns into a gap assessment of deploying that use case, which is a very difficult task. Very difficult task, as in it takes lots of efforts, lots of man hours, and lots of future planning, right? So, one of the things that we recommend is that as you are going through this process of use case identification, what about data acquisition? You cannot go back in time, start acquiring the data because by the time you develop the use case 9 months later, 9 months worth of data has disappeared from your ecosystem. So if you identify the data pipeline initially and develop the use cases based on these sort of use case ranking, gap assessment will happen. But one of the things that we prioritize is the data collection for the use cases that we're discussing, even though they haven't been prioritized yet. So those are some of the other engagements that we will recommend afterwards. But we set you up on the first one so that way you see the value on those engagements as well.
Very, thank you for sharing that. Lastly, we need to understand the time commitment. Is this a one time conversation or is it ongoing?
The reason we want to meet in 1 day engagement versus weeks and weeks of engagement is because we've seen over the weeks of engagement, we do not get the urgencies of shaving the time off from a 9 months project, right? Um, we've seen companies are stalling.
Mhm.
They're very much curious, but standing on the edge, and they have lots of knowledge that they can work with, yet they haven't made any decisions because of budget prioritization, stakeholders' inability to see the value in it, and somebody's ability to present those value has been the most diminishing aspect of it all, right? So
Yep.
how do we get these change agents to identify the value and explain those value in a clear-cut, economical ways to the rest of the organization is what we want to achieve, right? So
Right.
that at the end of the uh, time, we are able to say what would have taken us otherwise 9 months, we probably did that in 30 days. And that's a great return on investment because you saved a lot of time and man hours. And of course, you bought a stakeholders engagement that lasts for the next 5 years as well.
I think this is all very important. I want to thank you for sharing your answers, and we look forward to the engagement.
Thank you for asking me all those questions, and I'm looking forward to the engagement in Nebraska, Miami, and the Virgin Islands.
Exactly. Forward to that discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you.